Earlier this week, Christian Pulisic made headlines when he shared that he did, in fact, ask Mauricio Pochettino if he could play in the first two friendlies, but not continue on at the Gold Cup. Well, Pochettino addressed that today at the press conference, saying, yes, I made the decision to not have him there. I wanted one group of players to start together and finish together, even using Sergiño Dest as an example, that he came in, ultimately was evaluated by the medical staff, and needed more rest. He asserted himself as the coach by saying, I am a coach. I am not a mannequin. I love to communicate with all my players, but I communicate with all of them the same, and no one player will dictate the plan. As for player availability, Tyler Adams remains day-to-day with a foot injury, while Johnny Cardoso missed training due to illness. Both players will be evaluated tomorrow to assess their availability for the first match.
So some strong words from the manager, Mauricio Pochettino, today. It does feel, certainly like to some folks, that the tensions are rising between the Pulisic camp and maybe what the U.S. men's national team is right now. How did you read those statements from Pochettino?
Look,
big breath.
Obviously, there's been a lot going on this week, right, with all this stuff. And I don't get any enjoyment out of it. I don't know if we get enjoyment out. This is not fun for us a year out from the World Cup, Lex. You've referenced a year out from the '94 World Cup, what it should be, what it should look like. Christian Pulisic came out and publicly made some very, I would say, strong and interesting comments about his coach. Mauricio Pochettino had no choice but to protect himself, show everybody that he's the boss. No player is going to come to him and dictate which games they play and which games they don't. I've spent time with Mauricio Pochettino in Chicago. His demeanor is not to have to come out and do it's not in his personality, but he had no choice. When your best player and one of your leaders comes out and says these things publicly, he had no choice.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to suck up a lot of the oxygen, this feud, for lack of a better word. I don't think it's necessarily that bad. But, this is not AYSO also. While there is a meritocracy when it comes to sports in general, and certainly when it comes to a national team, it's not a complete meritocracy. And players are treated differently. And I think Mauricio Pochettino recognizes that he has to lay down the law, and by doing so, to Landon's point, establish his authority, while also understanding that there's going to come a point where he needs Christian Pulisic. Unless Christian Pulisic doesn't want to be there, or he's a problem child, and by all accounts he hasn't been, and I don't think that Mauricio Pochettino thinks that. But he does have to establish himself right now, leading up for the next year. And then when he brings him back into the fold, Christian Pulisic understands that he has a responsibility. But not everybody is treated equally, and Pochettino knows that, even though publicly he has to say that he's attempting to have everybody treated equally.
So, Lex, how does this impact the players that are in the camp and will be playing against TNT tomorrow?
Good question, yeah.
I mean, even though he's not talking about that and the focus is someplace else, I think behind the scenes he will have made it very, very clear. Listen, all of this stuff doesn't matter. You have this opportunity now, individually and collectively, and I have a responsibility to make sure that this team goes out, and like we said at the beginning of the show, puts this team in a much more positive direction, to your point, to have that type of momentum a year out from the World Cup, because I never in my wildest dreams believed that in the summer of 2025, this is what we would be talking about, and this is where we would be relative to the summer of 2026.
Yeah, and look, this is just a guess, but my guess is what Pochettino's saying publicly has not been said behind the scenes at all, or either enough. Because for your star player to come out and say these things publicly is pretty bold, right? And if you've been told behind the scenes that that's not okay, that's not what's happening, that's not acceptable, you don't come out and say that publicly. So it's just not a good look. You use the word tension. Mm-hmm. There is tension, and like everyone's kind of tiptoeing around it, but there's a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I think sometimes when there's that much tension out there, you just need to be blunt, give your assessment, say it,
and not publicly.
Get it out,
not public.
And move on.
We can do it publicly. They need to do it behind the scenes and get it done, over with.